You're listening to the Medic Materials Podcast, hosted by Mike Turek, Emily Yates, Kelsey Coons, and Gerard Cuomo. All are current EMS providers and educators with a combined 30 years experience. Each month, we discuss EMS news, medical science, and review actual EMS calls, bringing many educational opportunities to the listener. Portions of the calls have been altered to protect the privacy and identity of all involved.
Hello and welcome everyone back to the Medic Materials Podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with paramedic Gerard, EMT Emily, and paramedic intern Kelsey, as always. And today we're joined with a very special guest. We brought in not a very special guest. All right, sort of special,
special-ish.
So we're here with Steve. He is the chief of operations for the last 7 years of a countywide ALS first response agency here in upstate New York, and that is for the shorter version, an ALS FLYCAR system. You can talk louder because I can't hear you at all.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay.
Like I said, eat it and speak with your chest. So we're gonna turn it over to Kelsey's rig check here in a second, but we're going to have a discussion that's actually a listener-led question. I got an email a while back from a listener, Steven, and he was asking us to discuss ALS FLYCAR systems because he's transitioning his service into an ALS FLYCAR, and knowing that Gerard, you and I worked in one, I felt it was good to bring Steve in to give the operational side of things from an administrator point of view instead of just a provider point of view. So we'll go with the Kelsey's rig check, and then we'll get started.
So guys, we have officially reached over 840 subscribers on our YouTube page. So thank you to everybody who subscribed. That is a huge number.
He's grown.
Yeah, it does.
I don't understand.
He's good. But our next goal is going to be to get to 900 subscribers, and then after that, we're going to shoot for 1,000. Go big or go home. Today, we're going to shout out our listeners in Kentucky and Bangladesh, and our Patreon listener, Dakota. And if you would like to be like Dakota and get a shout out on the page and get special perks and join our team of VIP providers, we will be releasing our third Patreon podcast soon, so make sure you sign up and become a seasoned provider or a salty medic to give that a listen. And of course, today's episode was brought on by a person who sent us an email. So if you want to be like that and you have a cooler, interesting call or discussion that you want to hear us review or talk about on the show, fill out the Survey Monkey below.
All right, so with Steven's permission here, I'm gonna read the email that he sent, just so listeners and you guys have some context on what brought along this conversation. So first off, awesome. He says, loving the show and can relate to the around the table format, which is something that we strive here to bring because I don't hear it all that often. And he says, so loving the show can relate to the around the kitchen table format versus the Mr. Big Smart and Stuffy Paragod. I love it. He says, I currently work in South Carolina, and he got his EMS start back in Maryland many, many moons ago. He was brought up in the fire EMS system that utilized the chase car concept along with a tiered response. So FLYCAR, chase car, whatever you want to call it. He says several counties in Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey still use this. And he goes, however, in the county that he's in South Carolina, they're moving to that system starting last month. And their county is going to be the only county in the state of South Carolina to do that. This moves is in response to the growing national personnel EMS shortage, especially within the paramedic realm. I just thought it would be cool for some of your listeners to hear about the FLYCAR, chase car, QRV concept, curves, which are, what did we say they were?
Quick response.
Quick response vehicles. Thank you.
Ruse in Canada.
Yeah, ruse.
I think that one's my favorite.
Ruse.
Yeah.
What was that? Rapid response.
What? Rapid response.
Unit.
Yep.
Roo.
Roads.
So the ruse getting their Tim Hortons. So I just thought it would be cool for some of your listeners to hear about the FLYCAR Chase our QRV concept of providing ALS and tiered responses. I know that talking to friends and past coworkers in Georgia that are hurting for staff, they have never heard of the QRV concept except for supervisor type vehicles.
What?
Their system, they will have 14 ALS QRVs on a 24/72 rotation and 20 BLS transports to start. And it's, again, a brand new concept for their area. So I know, Steve, you did some research into their system. I know there was a GEMS article on it as well. Steve kind of alluded that they were, put in GEMS for this new concept down there. So I guess where I want to start is you doing the research into what their system is. How is that kind of similar to what you manage now?
So it's interesting because what they are doing is they're consolidating a number of providers who it looks like previously segmented the county, similar to, a town ambulance service like we have around here, but these look like private providers. So they're consolidating those. There's going to be one transporting agency, and then the county is going to run the paramedic service. And it'll be the QRV. So it looks like it's still going to be a separate entity that does the transports, and then the county is going to provide the FLYCARs. So the similarities to us is that we provide FLYCARs for an entire county. There isn't just one transporting agency, however. We have a number of towns that transport, but we provide the paramedic service for the whole.
So where I guess the history of the county that you provide, was there always a FLYCAR system? Was it, a commercial service prior that, got like booted out, or what was the kind of history of how the FLYCARs came to be? So
I don't think that it was always intended to be a FLYCAR system, but that's kind of the way it developed. They had a combination of volunteer ambulance services and contracted private providers. Unfortunately, the county is pretty rural, so it's not a lucrative contract for contracted providers. So my understanding is that more oftentimes than not, the contracted provider that was supposed to be in the county wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it grew out of that lack of availability of paramedics to provide paramedics in a FLYCAR to supplement the volunteer system.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, volunteerism is what it is, and there is more and more requirements for EMS providers. It's harder and harder for people to volunteer. You're working multiple jobs, both family members. So in 2000 is when the service started, the FLYCAR service, and it started small. It started with just a couple of towns, and over the course of about 3 or 4 years, it grew to encompass the entire county.
And how many trucks do you typically run on a daily basis? Like, is it still, I know you said it encompasses the county. Your county is very large. It's not, like you said, it's very rural. There's only, slight pockets of populated areas.
Right.
How can you, how many trucks does that take to cover?
So the county is roughly 650 square miles, and we cover it with 5 medics 24/7.
Yeah.
Sounds like the county I worked in, they covered it with 1.
Yeah. And that was something that I wanted to kind of talk about, because you had experiences in a not so great, FLYCAR system where there's one paramedic for 600
Almost
square
the exact
miles,
same, yeah.
And
Geographic
here
territory,
your
yeah.
system's covering the same with 5.
Yeah, I mean, there were days literally where, and I know I've told you the story where, I'm with someone who may or may not have a stroke, and then I'm kind of like leaning more towards stroke. And hey, Delta response in the south part of the county for a diff breather, and I'm like, 45 minutes for me to get from here to there, leave the stroke, go to the diff breather.
Right.
Shit, I'm here. I'm here now. I'm taking this patient. And turned out it was a stroke, but he stroked right in front of me.
Right. You can only treat one at a time, right?
I can only do one at a time, and it was literally one of those things where you had to learn, what
Triage.
you could and couldn't get away with as far as, triage basically. Radio triage. Okay. This is, by the time I get there, it's not, I've got this patient here, I'm over here. I can't be in two places at once. Who needs me more? And I know, to be fair, through the grapevine, I've heard that they've now, put more people on during the day. So I think they're coming up to speed. I think now they even have an ambulance or something. So that was the last thing I heard. But, at the time, it was one paramedic in a FLYCAR for the whole. And they actually used a BLS FLYCAR in the south part. They had an EMT and a FLYCAR stationed at volunteer firehouses that would go out, and that's pretty much what you would end up having to do is divvy things up and hopefully get some volunteer ambulance down there, use air medical as necessary. There was a paid EMS agency that ran in the north part of the county that you could, if they were around, you could
utilize
get a paramedic down there.
Yeah. So, Steve, what would you say to administrators or county officials or providers that are listening to this going, we're in this kind of same boat where we have all of this coverage. Maybe we don't have the best, staffing levels or whatever. And we're thinking about doing a FLYCAR system. What are the benefits, to a FLYCAR system?
So I think there's a lot of benefits, and I've worked in a number of different systems over my career. I've worked in tiered BLS, ALS ambulance systems, hybrid systems where you have an EMT and a paramedic on the same unit, and then the FLYCAR system more recently. It really only has been in the second half of my career or so where I worked in a FLYCAR system, but the benefits were pretty evident immediately. And I think from a logistical perspective, especially, you can do more with less, right? So if you have County X that needs 10 ambulances to sufficiently cover the call volume, it is inefficient to have 10 paramedic ambulances on. Okay? Paramedics are expensive. It costs a lot to train them. Equipment and medications cost a significant amount of money. Medications obviously are perishable. If you don't use them, you throw them out.
And now even the production of them, you just can't get production now, so there's another compounding factor.
And one more thing is there aren't as many.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a big factor.
It's a scarce commodity.
Yeah.
That's a huge factor. Having, paramedics are perishable. There's not a lot of them. And it's, in my opinion, it's wasteful to have a paramedic on every ambulance. When you think about call volumes overall, in general, I'm sure you could argue statistically 5 or 10 points one way or the other, but roughly 70% of 911 calls are BLS or can be adequately handled by a BLS provider.
I actually would have thought that was higher.
I can tell you from numbers that I've looked at in not just our own agency, but numbers outside our agency, not just regionally either, state,
right,
and nationwide. It's right around that 70-30 split. Some places it's more, some places it's less.
I wish my split was 70.
Yours is 97.3.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think I've BLS'd a call at the FLYCAR yet.
But right, so paramedics are, if you could do with 4 paramedics what you'd otherwise have to do with 10, and it also leaves that resource available for the higher priority calls, right? So if you get dispatched, like in your case, Gerard, so you get dispatched to that stroke, you get there and it's not a stroke. It's something that can, safely be turned over to a BLS provider. Now, maybe that ambulance covering that area is not available, but you still are for that chest pain or that cardiac arrest or that major trauma that comes in, 20 minutes later, right? Especially in a rural setting, right? Because in a rural setting, you are looking at 2+ hours turnaround time,
every bit of it.
And in some parts of our county, if we have to go to a trauma center or a STEMI center, it's, you're talking 4 to 5 hour turnaround time.
Yep.
So having the ability to get that paramedic back in service is essential, because now if your transporting ambulance is gone for 4 hours, if the paramedic is on that ambulance
to drive
to the hospital, it seems wasteful. Now, I'm sure that if you are a money person and you're a county administrator or something like that, and you're looking at the cost of a individual versus equipment, you would probably say, well, to have 10 paramedics and 5 FLYCARs, or 10 ambulances and 5 FLYCARs, or 10 ambulances and 4 FLYCARs, well, you're still paying for those bodies. So even though it may be a savings of, $30,000 per monitor and maybe, $10,000 worth of drugs per vehicle, per paramedic vehicle, the cost of training the paramedic, paying the paramedic, the retirement, the health benefits, and all that stuff out of an additional person outweighs the consolidating and putting that person on an ambulance. So I understand that argument,
right?
But when you look at it as a resource, I don't know that the slight savings you may have by consolidating a person onto an ambulance and saying, okay, we're going to have 1 EMT and 1 paramedic versus 2 EMTs in the ambulance and a paramedic in a FLYCAR is worth whatever savings you'd have.
Right.
Because like we said, paramedics are a scarcer commodity. And again, they cost more to train, they cost more to equip. The CME requirement, continuing education requirement is higher. The skill set is higher. And there's burnout, right? You have to worry about burnout. And if you are a person that goes to school for however long, paramedic training course is 1 year to 2 years, plus the continuing education and everything else that you have to keep up with to be a paramedic. Do you really want to drive 7 out of 10 times to the hospital?
Right.
I
mean, you and I were having that discussion the other day, Gerard, in the fact that you worked a 12-hour shift at one of your agencies and you drove every call.
Didn't do a single thing.
Didn't do a single thing. So, I mean, that to you is a waste. You know, I started my EMS career as an MVO. I was not CPR certified. I was nothing. I was literally a driver all day. I was paired with an EMT or a paramedic, and they did everything. All I did was drive everywhere. Almost that seems more efficient than wasting a paramedic driving all day.
Well, and this thing is you're able to do more with that paramedic than if you have them stuck on a rig going off on a BLS call. Yeah, you don't have. You may save a little bit of money, here and there for the personnel wise, but what you're getting in return as far as operational capability is, I would say, 10 times greater, because I can tell you right now, I've had those calls where, and one always pops out in my head when I hear something like that. I was on scene for a seizure patient, 45 minutes. I'm in their apartment, administering Versed, got the line, got fluids going. She'd come out, she'd go back in, all this stuff. 45 minutes waiting for an ambulance. Had I been on a rig, they would have had no paramedic to deal with her.
Right.
She'd been on her own for 45 minutes.
So, question. Do you think that
You stated that wrong. It's
So
I was gonna say
I have a question.
Yeah, that is wrong.
I was trying to get in there before somebody else said something. Can you dig on that?
You could get
Yeah,
on
you
that.
do.
So I have a question. Do you think that mindset will affect your providers though? Like, okay, well, there's only 2 other ambulances or 2 other paramedics in service, so I'm just going to send this BLS.
I can tell you honestly, that mindset never. I never had that mindset.
So I'm gonna
That's
say,
you personally.
and Kelsey and I are on the
Yeah.
other end of this.
Yeah.
So
I
we
gotcha.
are the BLS ambulance.
Yeah.
And how many times does somebody look at you and be like, "Oh, well, there's only there's
Yeah.
only 3 medics in service, so I'm gonna let you take this." And like, well, you only have 4 to begin with, so I think our odds are pretty good. Let's go.
But that's true. Looking at it from the other perspective, you guys work on the BLS side and deal with the paramedics coming onto your truck.
Sometimes it feels like kidnapping trying to get them to go with you.
right. And and I think
You're
honestly,
strategizing. Thank you.
It feels like kidnapping. I didn't say it was
Yeah.
kidnapping.
I think a lot of it comes down to though, culture at the agency, right? Like, individuals will make their own decisions. I mean, Gerard and I rarely BLS things. So, for me to it's funny. Every time that I BLS something in the FLYCAR, I cringe for the next hour because I'm like, they're going to die 3 minutes away. They're dead. And
It's gonna be that one time that toe pain just travels.
right. and I BLS'd it, and it totally could have or should have and I second guess myself. But that's me as a provider. I don't know if there are providers out there that would do there's I'm the last paramedic in the county. You were the only paramedic in the county. I've been where I am the sole paramedic left in my county, and I'm just like, now I know how Gerard felt.
What I did for myself, and I mean, I think I did without realizing it, is I ended up building up a pretty good rapport with all the little volunteer agencies out there, all the people that would show up on scenes, 3:00 in the morning out of the kindness of their heart, and always treated them with respect, had good rapport with them. And, when I would go to them and it was, let's say an obvious or maybe a borderline BLS call, and I would ask them, would you guys be okay if I let you take this to the hospital? And they knew if they said no, I'm in, no problem.
Right.
We had a good working relationship. 9 times out of 10, they'd say, "Hey, we just wanted you to come just quick check him out, and we're just going to tear off after here. We just wanted your opinion." They just knew that I was on and I could just come, and it was probably something that they could handle themselves. So I think a lot of that goes to the providers having a relationship with the people that they're going to be working with from these other agencies. If you, I don't know how to speak eloquently, so I'll just say if you're a dick to them, I mean, you're going to, CISO, shit in,
It's
shit
true.
out.
Yeah.
But that was my experience was, in fact, I just actually asked one of the volunteer fire ministers to officiate my wedding next year. So,
Yay.
and this was, she just ran into me and she was like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you since," and I'm just like, "Oh shit." So
do you kind of feel the same way, Steve, in that it's more, provider based or culture based in the agency? Like if the agency sets down expectations, and you have a good working relationship with the BLS agencies that you're serving, it's not usually a problem.
No, I think it brings up a couple of different factors, right? So number one is culture is obviously a huge thing, right? You have to have expectations for providers, and you have to hold providers accountable,
Right.
because you can set expectations and expect people to meet those expectations, but if you don't do anything to hold them accountable, then the expectations go out the window,
Right.
Because good, bad, or otherwise, everyone is going to get into a position at some point where they say, well, I guess I could probably let this go, and no one's going to call me on it.
Right.
So I think culture is really important, and setting and holding people accountable to certain expectations. And I think that can have a domino effect on the BLS providers too, because Kelsey and Emily, you guys might be less likely if you're working in an area where you know that the culture is for the paramedics is not a good one. You might be more likely to either not call for a paramedic or cancel them before they arrive on scene.
I mean,
right?
we all-
Because you just don't want to deal
Absolutely.
We all have that paramedic that you're like, there's no point in me even calling them because all they're gonna do is stand here, and they're just gonna end up walking out of the ambulance
They're
anyways.
gonna show up with their shoelaces untied and
See, and as an
Don't get me started. Don't get me
shirt
started.
untucked.
And obviously, as an administrator, that is, you never want to hear anything like that, right? You never want to hear that providers are hesitant to call your paramedics because they're worried that, or they know or feel in the back of their minds that, well, this provider's not going to transport this patient, so I might as well just get to the hospital where they can have definitive care.
Yeah, I will say that the experience I did have working at that system, it really was. It was one of those things where, yeah, I knew the EMTs, they all knew me, and I even knew the cops because I'd hear them going on a domestic call, and I would just weasel my way into the area, and they'd all see me, and just in case, because that's usually when the bad shit happens. And so I mean, like, everyone just kind of like, as far as me on my shifts, we worked well together, and they knew they could call me, and I wasn't going to shit fuck them. Pardon my language.
I didn't even realize there was a word combination that you could use.
I paint a tapestry.
He's crafty.
Yeah.
I think in the last 5 episodes, I've added some sort of poop or shit sound effect solely for Gerard. So what's one more?
If you're working in this type of system, and you understand that this is a partnership thing. This isn't a, I'm all things that are paragod, and I'm just here to get my paycheck and go to sleep. Well, you're going to have people that are going to get turned off to you, and like you said, they're not going to call, and then bad things happen from that.
Right.
I mean, like from my favorite call there, I wasn't even dispatched to that. That came out as a Bravo response. When I heard who was going to the call, I knew it was 1 ambulance and 1 fire department. I'm like, 2 cars, 1 ambulance. There's going to be at least 2 patients. So
I might as well.
I just called and I said, hey, go ahead and attach me to the call. I'm on my way. Because I just wanted to be there to help out. And when you have that kind of relationship with your BLS crews and stuff like that, it works out really good.
And I do that in my FLYCAR. I do the same thing. I'll sit there and I listen to scan all day, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this ambulance that is in my coverage zone is getting dispatched to a Alpha something, and I'm like, they're probably going to call me for that. And it's like,
I'm like,
yeah, and
let me get my RMA sheet out.
lots of people wouldn't go, and I just drive up there and I'll poke my head in and be like, hey, I'm here. And they're like, oh, why are you here? I'm like, just in case. And some of them have turned out like, hey, I need to be there. And others, I'm just like, I was never here. See ya.
And I have literally done that where I've gone and just shown up for an Alpha or a Bravo, and I don't step on their toes.
Nope.
I show up. Hey, you want to know?
You do you, man.
Do your thing. I'm just here if you need me.
Yep.
Yeah, I need you to lift that goddamn stair chair.
I've done it.
That's what I need.
I've done it. Yes.
You need the muscles today.
Hello.
Pretty much. Oh, I've done it. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. All female crew in the middle of the night, and they were like, "Oh, we're so happy to see you." It was like a 350-pounder on the floor.
At that point, I would have been like, I'm just a ghost. Bye.
You never saw me.
Yep,
These are not
never
the droids
saw
you're
me.
looking for.
Right. So, talking, positives. Are there negatives to the system? Like, other than, on the BLS side, looking at, possible negatives of, possible bad providers not doing, their due diligence. Are there negatives to a FLYCAR system that people might not be aware of?
I think going back to the cost factor, I think is the one area where you might make the argument if you were looking at a county system, whether it's whether it's run by the county, a nonprofit, private provider, doesn't matter. If you're looking strictly at cost and saying, yes, it is absolutely cheaper for 2 people versus 3. But, I think I'm biased because I really like the system that I run. And, and I think that other than cost, it's hard for me to come up with something that I could see as a negative. Especially because in the county we cover, since we are a county-wide service, we don't have to worry about jurisdictional boundaries, right? So we don't have to worry about, well, that call is in X town. That's not my zone, but it sounds really bad. I should go there.
Right.
In fact, I encourage my paramedics to back each other up. So if that call that may not be in your zone sounds really bad, go back up the paramedic that is covering that zone. You can always turn them around.
Right.
And I think actually, I know you asked for negatives, but I'm going to have to go back to positives.
Damn it.
And turn around.
But it actually, so when you talk about the providers, right? If you're in a system where I'm calling it a hybrid for lack of a better term, but where you have a paramedic and an EMT on the ambulance, maybe you both can speak to this, but if the paramedic is the one taking in all the serious calls and the EMT is the one taking in the less serious calls, I think you lose out on an opportunity for making better EMTs.
Bingo.
I
100%. I was totally going to bring that up.
And that's there was a call that I did on the FLYCAR, diff breather, significant diff breather, where I was working from the time I got on scene to the time I dropped this dude off. And, I had the EMT with me from their agency. And again, I was like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. You like, nope, put that tablet away. You're not doing demos today. We're working. And it was a experience for that EMT because they never get to do anything like that. And they actually came up like 2 weeks later and was like, I just want to thank you for allowing me to do everything that you allowed. Like, I was like, here, set up a neb. Yeah. And they were like, we never set up nebs. Like that's a paramedic thing. They don't ever let us do that. And I'm like,
BLS skill.
I'm like, sorry, I had and better things to do.
That's where the mindset of, I'm just an EMT
exactly
comes
from.
Right.
So I could totally see
absolutely.
that would be,
I 100% agree with that.
Her and I were on a call at that time where, get in the back, the place we would go and do mutual aid to. And get in the back, she's driving, or you went to follow us or something. And the one I was with from that agency, from that volunteer agency, I was like, all right, we're going to do a forward lead. And she's like,
a what?
A what? Clipboard in hand.
Yep.
And I said, you don't know how to do a forward lead? No. Okay, well,
we're going to learn today.
Put the clipboard down. Yep. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Real simple.
I think that's
and she was like, wow, that's really cool.
But
that's
a culture. Like, even on our BLS ambulance that I ride on, like, I'm on a serious diff breather. I turn around, my partner has a clipboard. Like, what are you doing? I need your hands.
Yeah. I actually snapped at an EMT the other day.
Me too.
I've saved 10 lives with this clipboard.
Well, and that was it. I was like, put the clipboard down. No life has ever been saved with a clipboard. Like, we don't got time for that.
Yeah.
I think that's where I've benefited seriously as a third at the one agency, because like I'm used to, if it's a BLS call, I'm in the back and I'm being an EMT, but if it's an ALS call, I'm also in the back being an EMT. And I think that's why like my transition over to a BLS ambulance and a FLYCAR was a lot easier for me, because one of the first calls I did that was a little bit more serious, the medic looked at me and I was like, do you want a 12 lead? And they're like, you know how to do that? And I was like, yeah, like this is what I do. I'm a third. I'm your extra set of hands, and like they're not used to that a lot of times.
And I think that's another positive to add on to Steve's, is as a paramedic being in the back, in a FLYCAR system. Guess what? 9 times out of 10, I get an EMT in the back with me.
Right, you have help.
Right.
I'm not there. The one-man band, trying to pound the drum, play the guitar, and blow the kazoo at the same time. You know what I mean? It's nice when you can okay, here, you bag, I'm gonna do this.
Yep.
You know, and then we'll figure the next part out, you know.
Yeah.
And having that set of hands back there. So I'll do another positive. So you have
Tony Robbins would be really proud of us.
Yeah, right.
This is the power of positive thinking.
So
today.
one of the other factors would be, right, if you have a serious call, you've got somebody back there who can help you versus having to take a second ambulance out of service.
Bingo.
Because if you only have 2 providers, you need a second set of hands. Maybe you don't need another paramedic. Maybe you just need somebody to bag,
Right.
to help set up, to whatever.
Squeeze the IV fluids.
Right.
I mean, there's a myriad of things that somebody could.
Simple as that.
Yeah,
Right.
But having that set of hands in the back of the ambulance, and like I said, those teaching opportunities, right? Because so maybe you and Kelsey are working together. You've got 5-10 minutes on scene to stabilize your patient. So she's getting that 5 or 10 minute interaction on these serious calls, and then she's in the front driving for half an hour, 45 minutes.
Right.
Whereas if you are in a tiered system with a BLS ambulance and an ALS FLYCAR, now she's in the back with you for 45 minutes, treating this really sick patient, and getting, benefiting from your knowledge, but also you are making her a better provider because she's seeing more stuff.
Right. She's not just driving.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that helps out too, especially if you're thinking like long term. I just saw that one really serious call. Now tomorrow my paramedic's 25 minutes out, but it's the same thing. And now I'm a little bit better prepared for, okay, I'm not having that oh shit factor because I was driving and I was checking in the rearview mirror that you haven't tipped over yet.
Right.
Like,
And there's
And like Emily says, thinking that she didn't go to paramedic school.
I still think that every day
yeah. I mean, she went to nursing school and makes more money than both of us. So,
and
Who's
hate it
the
even
fool?
more than either of you. So, I mean, who is the fool?
yeah, who's the fool? So, one of the things that I look at too is and this kind of can go positive or negative depending on the paramedic provider. But, Gerard, in your system where you were the only FLYCAR, 45 minutes treating one patient, right? Before you can get anybody to come in and be like, hey, you got family, the patient, and yourself, and I think having those types of long wait times for a transporting unit can better the paramedic, but it can also really it can help the administration figure out, well, maybe this one's not gonna cut the mustard. Like if you're sitting there and you have a diff breather or you have a cardiac arrest that you're gonna work for 15-20 minutes before your transporting ambulance gets there, just because maybe your response time is a mile and theirs is 20, you might be there for a while. It's, I've had calls where I'm there.
I've had to use family members.
Yeah,
to
I'm
the
there
person
for a
so I
while.
could get a line in real quick, and then I would go back to doing single provider CPR.
Right. Literally every single time I pick up a FLYCAR shift, the first thing that goes through my head is my step checklist on how to run a cardiac arrest by myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk in. I'm going to make sure they're actually dead. Okay, then I'm going to put the Lucas on. Once
I'm proud of you for that second step.
Once the Lucas is on, I have free hands. I'm like, okay, then I'm good. Mostly dead. Yeah.
not dead.
But I literally have to sit there and run through because inevitably I'm going to get the day where I'm doing a cardiac arrest by myself until somebody else gets there. Maybe that's 5, 10, 15 minutes later, who knows? But I think looking at it that way, the FLYCAR system can strengthen the BLS providers, but it can also strengthen your ALS providers as well.
Right.
Because they have to sink or swim. There's nobody there that's going to save them.
Yes. And I will tell you, personally, that so as I alluded to earlier, I worked in a number of different systems. So initially moving to upstate New York and getting into a FLYCAR system, I had only ever worked on an ambulance. And I happened to work in a system that was double paramedic. and it was a tiered response with BLS ambulances and ALS ambulances. I won't tell you the system, but let's just say they do about 1.8 million calls a year.
Giggity.
What?
So, but I had a paramedic to lean on, another paramedic to lean on, and we were, maybe there'd be some traffic, but at best we were probably 10 minutes from the hospital. So it really was a culture shock going from something like that to 45 minutes or an hour alone, right, or, with a BLS provider who maybe I didn't know, to, a tertiary care center. Right. It was certainly a wake-up call. And I had to be a better paramedic, right? Yeah. Because I didn't have somebody else to lean on. I didn't have a hospital 10 minutes away or 5 hospitals to choose from 10 minutes away. I had a hospital that did this thing, right, and that's where I needed to go. And it was going to take me an hour to get there, no matter what.
Yep.
So it's, I think you're absolutely right. I think it forces the ALS providers to be better also.
Do you girls have anything to add from a BLS perspective? Like about the FLYCAR system?
About to answer.
Okay. No, I was about to ask a question, but it was not that.
Okay, well, ask your question.
So do you think, you see staffing issues worse now than we ever have, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Do you think that the staffing issues are going to affect a FLYCAR system more so than if they were on an ambulance?
No. So I think the FLYCAR, as we kind of alluded to earlier, the FLYCAR system helps with the staffing shortage, because you need fewer paramedics to do the job, right? You don't have to staff 10 ambulances with paramedics. You can staff
a driver, an EMT, and a paramedic.
Well, say that you have an established system already. So your system has, you said 5 trucks on all the time. Well, now you're in the staffing shortage. So now we don't have enough staff for that. Do you see that happen ever, or is that just made up in my mind?
We absolutely, the staffing, we are not immune to the staffing crisis in EMS. Right. But what I'll say is I think we are better equipped to handle it because we don't need as many resources.
Okay.
So if we had to staff 10 ambulances versus 5 FLYCARs, right, I think it would be significantly more difficult to find those paramedics to staff those units than it is to do it with half the number.
That makes sense.
And I keep going back to 10 ambulances because several years ago, there was a proposal for a county-wide ambulance system in our county, and the proposal was going to be 10 ALS ambulances. And when I think about the staffing those 10 paramedics,
it's cringing.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, I think we see universally staffing shortages in EMS on the BLS
just across
and ALS
the country
level.
right now.
Yeah,
anywhere.
Across the country, but we also see that staffing shortage in hospitals.
Yep.
So that speaks back to the turnaround time, right? So now if I've got a paramedic out of service for 4 hours, that didn't need to be
right.
That paramedic can still be in service while that ambulance is waiting at the hospital.
Right.
Yeah, I literally had one like that the last shift I worked. Brought the patient in to where you work, and
sorry.
No.
Not for
We
long.
didn't discharge that patient in that room, but that's your room, so go stand over there. 50 minutes later, we're still standing there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Already had an ICU patient.
Whatever. But this was an ALS ambulance, not in service. And we were just sitting there.
Yeah.
Then you get the messages from your supervisor. Where are you? Why are you not back in service yet?
That's a huge thing that I bring up,
though.
though.
To begin with, so
right,
worse.
and that's it. And you're looking at again wasting that paramedic because yes, EMTs save lives all the time, but there's certain things that EMTs just can't do. But paramedics can do the whole gambit. So,
Even if it's a BLS call and you have that medic still in service,
bingo.
You can go and care is not delayed. You've got somebody on scene that can initiate care.
Yeah.
And then, okay, hey, great. That toenail looks really bad. Here.
And heck, now with telehealth.
And now
with telehealth.
Have a wet bandage and we'll wait for the ambulance to get there.
Bite me.
But that that alludes to the whole community paramedicine, community paramedic FLYCAR system. Australia was one that started it very early in their, because their system is province wide. So, they have 4 or 5 provinces in the country, and each province runs their own EMS agency.
Yeah,
so
New South Wales and
right.
Queensland
So
are completely different. Yeah.
right. So if you work in EMS, no matter what level, you will work for the province government because they run the EMS. The only volunteers in that entire country are in the bush.
Yeah.
Because that's where they need to be. You had a perfect opportunity.
Nope. I'm behaving myself. When we have a guest, I behave.
Okay.
You know that.
I know. But yeah, they sectioned off
Didn't even drop a giggity.
they sectioned off
Did I? Sorry.
a portion of their paramedics to solely be in FLYCARs as community paramedics. Yeah. So they go out and, they do telehealth. They, do like well now visits, home checks, this, that, the other thing. And that's all they do. They don't do any of the 911 response or anything like that. There you go. And, and I feel like that's something that
self-service.
Out here you should. I feel like that's somewhere that paramedics and FLYCARs can get to.
Yeah. Well, so that takes that piece of it, right? So you're not taking an ambulance out of service to do those things. If you're a paramedic in a FLYCAR, so I think the FLYCAR, one of the reasons that I really like the FLYCAR system is because I think it gives an opportunity for a more dynamic service, right? You're able to, so we already said you can do more with less, but you can just do more generally because now if your administration looking at finances, right, taking an ambulance out of service to do a telehealth visit or do some kind of community paramedic function, that's a paramedic that now cannot transport, that's an ambulance that can now not transport a patient.
Right. Which is lost revenue.
Right. And I hate to look at it that way. But being able to do things in a FLYCAR, like I said, makes it for a more dynamic system because you don't have to take an ambulance out of service. So you can do a telemedicine visit. You can do a wellness check. You can do, we have paramedics in our system that are on a technical rescue team. So now if that paramedic is tied up on a technical rescue for 2, 3, 4 hours, you're not taking an ambulance out of service. Right. And you still have a provider with the team that can not only care for the patient, but care for, if God forbid one of the rescuers gets hurt. We had, during the pandemic, we had medics who were trained to do vaccinations and would go do in-home vaccinations. Like I said, there's an opportunity to do a lot more by having that additional resource in the system that I think you lose out on or is not as efficient if you have that provider on an ambulance.
Anything for you girls, Dad or Gerard? Anything that you guys are thinking of?
I mean, I would just say, where I stand on the whole FLYCAR system and the use of them. And like I am like the last person that even wants to be in one right now. You know what I mean? It's like, because of my bad experience, and I still see the benefit, and it really does, especially the way things are right now. And just from what you've told me about the system you work in, it sounds like that's the right way to do it, and it's successful and it works. And I wish more places that are, I don't want to say complaining, but, constantly sending out emails, staffing issues, and, we need a full crew here and a full crew there and a full crew here. Well,
think outside the box.
Yeah. You're not adapting to this, to the situation.
Right.
You're still trying to do things the same way, even though the times have changed.
Right. And I think that's where this whole conversation stems from, is this county decided, hey, we have this significant problem that we're not solving with conventional means. let's think outside the box, and change the entire system.
But use your resources how you need to.
Right.
Don't waste resources anymore.
Right.
Yeah, and again, if you're talking financials, you could look at it and say potentially that, yes, paying for 3 people versus paying for 2 people is more expensive, but can you put a price on that? The capability, but more so the perishability of the skills and the overall strain on the system of trying to staff more than you can reasonably accommodate.
Right, exactly.
Right. Because, I look at it in if an ambulance company that's running a standard ambulance, EMT paramedic, and they're running 5 ambulances, but they can't staff 3 of them. Well, now they can't staff their 5 ambulances that they've said to their district, we will have 5 ambulances on. So now they're calling in mutual aid. They're doing this, they're doing that because they're short staffed. Whereas, in the county that you work in and run this agency, there's 5 or 6 different BLS agencies, and then there's, the 5 ALS FLYCARs. You always have the ability to, someone, called out sick or whatever. We still have 4 FLYCARs, which is sufficient to cover the county.
But the thing is, too, when you have those ambulances and you're like, we can only staff 3 of them, well, those 3 are out. Now I'm getting mutual aid. I'm still waiting to get care.
Right.
When you have this system, there's so many other options that you're not delaying patient care.
Right.
And not to mention, let's talk money. You've got 2 rigs sitting idle or 3 rigs sitting idle.
How much money are they making?
In my former life, we had a little saying: if those engines ain't turning, we ain't making money.
Mm-hmm.
So you're losing money that way, and I have to assume that running FLYCARs is probably a little cheaper than ambulances.
Yeah, well, obviously you're only paying for one provider, so
even the like maintenance and
the upkeep,
the overall
physical,
the overall cost of the vehicle is you figure probably a third of what an ambulance costs.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so we can look at money 2 different ways. We can look at, yes, the retirement, the benefits, the et cetera is going to cost more. It's not going to even out on what you'd be saving for a monitor, a Lucas, drugs, a video laryngoscope, you name it.
All your toys.
But, when I go into my office and I look at the giant box of medications that are expired because they haven't been used, that have to go back to a reverse distributor or pharmacy or whatever, imagine that was double because you had
double the ALS.
Right. And it's wasteful, it's wasteful. Having 6 cardiac monitors versus having to have 12,
right.
Being able to, doing more with less, right? So when we purchased our CPR devices, our automatic CPR devices, one of the reasons that I thought it would be prudent for us to have them versus the BLS agencies is, well, number 1, we're going to go on every cardiac arrest anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, instead of you having to buy for 7 or 8 transporting agencies, if you needed to put one on all the ambulances because maybe the ambulance that the Lucas is on is out of service.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking about having to buy maybe 15 devices versus having to buy 5.
Right.
So I think there is those economies of scale with equipment.
Yeah.
And like I said, a FLYCAR is a third the cost of an ambulance.
Yeah.
You still need that ambulance,
right?
But
I mean, even imagine the upkeep and the
just the maintenance cost. Thinking most of them are
on an ambulance versus changing brakes on a Explorer.
Right. And that's it. No matter what, you're looking at an SUV type. Some of them even run smaller.
If it's Dubai, it's a Lamborghini.
Yeah, man.
Put it out there.
Why not?
Wants the Lamborghini.
I wouldn't fit in a Lamborghini.
I'd like to see you try.
You see fat guy in a little coat.
Anything else?
So I do have a question about, what do you think feedback mechanism wise you have to have if you're going to have a FLYCAR system? So like you have a paramedic and an EMT on an ambulance, that call goes in BLS, should have gone ALS, it's pretty easy to, figure out the long-term consequence. But you turn over a patient, you don't see what happens after my charts are in. You get what I'm saying? So like a paramedic turned a patient over to me, I drop him off at the hospital, say there's a bad outcome. If you're not directly connected to that agency, you're not going to see, and that paramedic's never going to find out. Maybe they ask, maybe they find out, maybe they don't. So what type of feedback mechanisms do you have to have between like a countywide FLYCAR system and all the little towns that supply your transporting agent?
So that's a really good question. I think
it's actually
a
really good question.
It was.
I've been thinking about how to phrase that for the past 10 minutes.
And I'm over here pooping in my hand and throwing it.
Seriously,
come on. That's a great question.
So it depends on a couple of factors, right? So one, how big of an agency are we talking about? If we're going to use my agency, I think we are small enough that we have relationships with the administrators of the BLS agencies and the providers from those agencies to say, hey, we had this, we had an issue or we had an incident or, one of my providers was concerned that this, this paramedic turned over this call. So I think having good relationships with the administrators of the BLS agencies is important. We also have the benefit in our county of a lot of our BLS agencies share the same medical director as the ALS agency. So you're going to get that feedback that way.
I noticed that. He has the whole county, literally the entire county.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 towns, but that's important, and he's a local ER physician, so he sees a lot of the patients that come in. Not everybody has that, so I think making sure you have those relationships, and again, holding those people accountable, right? So making sure that you have a quality improvement system, right? And that those charts are being read. And if there is question, reviewing the BLS chart along with the ALS chart. And that's where those relationships come into play, right? We could probably talk for another hour about the benefits of it being one system versus multiple systems.
Well, that's actually what he had too, wasn't it? The email was a system as a whole. They're just putting FLYCARs in it.
Yeah, they're just separating it. So like County X is supplying 10
Yeah,
ambulances and 5 FLYCARs.
Right. So
so it looks like based on the bit of research that I did before the podcast was it's going to be a private provider providing the ambulances and the county is providing the paramedics.
Okay.
yeah,
But but that's still, I think they said they had 9 transporting agencies before. So you're still consolidating to one. And again, that eliminates those jurisdictional boundaries. You have the economies of scale. I mean, we could go on, but outside the scope of this podcast.
that's Steve's soapbox. We all have our particular one.
But having those paramedics under, instead of having it be 5 agencies or 6 agencies, having one paramedic agency that is accountable to one medical director, one administrator, one
way of training.
Yeah. So that's hugely valuable, right?
Yeah.
So now you don't show up and maybe paramedic from town Y shows up with paramedic from town X, but they have different medical directors. They're trained differently. They have a different skill set. They don't use the same equipment.
Yeah.
Now you're like,
So do you put any? So there's a system in a county south of here that runs transporting ambulances, but then they also staff a certain amount of FLYCARs that have 2 paramedics in them, and they have 2 sets of ALS gear.
Why?
So that their thought process is their
just watch.
They send a medic and leave the other one in service.
Right.
Bingo.
So they'll respond to a call, say call for a diff breather in, zone A, and one of the paramedics will take it and they'll go off to the hospital, and then the other paramedic calls in service, and they're just so busy that that paramedic provider that stayed behind is literally on another call in the next 6 minutes. So then they go out on a call.
How do you like get back together?
The hospitals
Maps
are
it.
only so close. Like they don't that
It's more city.
it's more city, so they are close to each other no matter where they go. So they don't have like,
buddy
oh
system.
hey, we're going to this hospital and that's north and an hour, and this one's going south 45 minutes, and now they're an hour and 45 minutes apart. They're 10 minutes apart at 4 different hospitals. So do you think that there's certain places where that is beneficial?
We know you'd leave your room to leave them.
Sorry, you're walking.
Yeah, I think conceptually it's great. And if it's doable in the system, obviously as an administrator, it saves money because you're only buying one vehicle
Right.
versus two stations versus one. Or I don't know how practical that is in a rural setting.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, if we were to try it out in like your county, that would never work. The
You'd never
hospitals
make
are
it
just,
anywhere
The
in time.
hospitals are just too far apart.
Well, and you also, my thought would be, well, if paramedic does a call in town X and then the second paramedic gets a call in town Y, which might be across,
Right.
The county, now that ambulance
It's still out of service.
Yeah, because they have to go find
All
that
the way.
FLYCAR wherever
Yeah.
it is across the county. So I like it conceptually, and I think it works well in a more densely populated area that has more facilities. New Jersey, all their paramedic all their ALS is FLYCAR for the most part. And they run that type of system, 2 paramedics in a suburban or some other. So
just a
it
different
works.
thought process. Again, it wouldn't work where we are, but
Right, but
it
it might
would
be
work
for somebody
in
else out there who
it's
has a more urban environment, or
right,
something.
and
yeah.
is thinking of how to fix issues.
Yeah.
That may be a an option as well. So, anything for the table to add? Otherwise, we will say thank you to Steve. Is there anything that you want to add that we didn't touch base on about FLYCARs other than they're awesome?
They are awesome. I will 100% endorse that.
Is there a system in which it wouldn't work?
It's probably not as efficient a system in an urban setting, because when you think about an urban environment, you have to think about the logistics of getting to the call, getting to the hospital. So one of the things we do is we park the vehicle either at the scene or someplace in transit to the hospital. You don't have that option in an urban environment, right? You have very limited places to park.
You can't
have
double
no-
park a FLYCAR outside of a store on Fifth Avenue.
So it probably is not as effective a system in an urban setting. Not to mention a lot of the things we talked about here with paramedics and EMTs and having that educational piece. If you're 5 minutes or 10 minutes from a hospital,
It doesn't matter.
it really doesn't
Yeah.
matter because your turnaround times are such that you can get back in service quickly. I think the biggest bang for the buck when it comes to a FLYCAR system is in a suburban, rural, super rural setting. Because again, you're talking about limited resources, you're talking about long response times, long transport times, and if you can do more with less,
There's the
that's-
benefit.
right?
Right.
And I think so. The one last thing I'll say is, I think it's incumbent on the agency that is providing the paramedics to help educate the BLS providers. So I've done a number of ALS for BLS classes in our county where we teach BLS providers how to, like Gerard said, set up a 4 lead, set up a 12 lead, the vent settings, the Lucas,
Right.
selecting
Yeah.
selecting
Yeah.
catheter sizes, knowing
Right.
okay, well I know that an orange is always a 14 gauge, right? Setting up a CPAP,
Right.
those are invaluable. Spiking a bag,
Right.
Yep. And I think when the BLS providers feel more engaged, they automatically become better providers, right? And they're more invested, right? They're more invested in the call
they're
because
not disconnected. Okay, I'm going to go drive now. Bye.
Right.
And they're not, like
Holding
you
a
said earlier,
clipboard.
holding a
Exactly.
clipboard.
I'm not just sitting in a
Clipboard
captain's
jockeys.
chair.
Right. They're invested in the patient. They're invested in the care.
Right.
And they're more interested in follow-up. They're more interested in asking questions and learning more.
Right.
And I think just overall it creates a better BLS provider. It creates a better ALS provider. And I think those are the intangibles that you can't that you can't talk about money.
You can't put a price tag on
can't
that.
put a price tag
Exactly.
on it, right? Because
And one of the things that my father-in-law told me when I first started working FLYCAR, he's like, don't always monopolize your patient. So, and it took me a while to figure out like what the hell he said, but a lot of the BLS providers get disconnected and dive into the demos on their clipboard because, well, the paramedic's here. It's the paramedic's patient. Well, if I'm only doing a line giving Zofran and then I'm going to stare at the monitor for the next 45 minutes, I could do that from the captain's chair.
Right.
I do my line. I give him Zofran. I flip the monitor around and I go, hey, EMT, this is yours. And I'll move. And unless I need to do something more, I'm here. It's still ALS, but you're going to do the bulk of everything else. And I think that, again, is invaluable because, again, they're getting more patient contacts, whether I'm there or not.
Yeah, even if it's just up in their bedside manner.
Right. Exactly.
So are you telling me that I can't just rate all care provided by medic?
No.
Rude.
yeah, it's true, and it's something that I struggled with. In addition to the culture shock of going from being 5 minutes from the hospital to 45, I was used to working by myself, so I had to get in the habit of engaging those providers, and not making it the one-man show,
right?
And that was tough coming from the system that I was in, trying to make that jump. But again, like I said, it creates a better environment all around because you have providers that are invested in care of that patient. That's what it's all about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's why we're all doing what we do. So, all right. If there's nothing else, I will say toodles to everybody until September or October. What month are we in? October.
It's
October
Kelsey's birthday
15th.
month.
Yay! And it's Halloween.
And it's Halloween.
That's more important.
Ouch. Okay.
I mean, I would argue that pumpkin spice is the most important part.
Oh my God, he's like the other Steve.
Don't even get me started.
I do have pumpkin donuts in my car.
All right. Well, Gerard, with that,
Donuts.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you'd like more information on the podcast or to send us a call to review, visit medicmaterials.com/podcast. To learn more information, like us on Facebook at Medic Materials EDU, or watch our weekly instructional videos on the Medic Materials YouTube channel.